Mr. C.
Good morning, Larry. Good morning, Valentine. Good morning to good morning, Wadi. Good morning, Lagos.
Thank you,
Good
Mr.
morning.
C. Mr. C is at Mr. C with five E's on on Twitter. And then we have Wade. Wade Aime. Good morning, Wade.
Good morning, Ira. Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Tunde.
Good morning to
Mr.
you.
C. Good morning, Lagos.
Well, mornings, good mornings all round. Thank you very much indeed. Now, to join the conversation this morning from wherever you're listening to us from, you can use these platforms.
Our WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. That is for messages. WhatsApp number again 0809 444 0981. You can tweet at smooth981fm with the hashtag freshly pressed 981. We're streaming live on YouTube, so type smooth981fm Lagos in the search box and watch us live.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Let's go on to our first story for this morning. Mr. C, I'll come to you. 119 Nigerians on death row in Malaysia. And this report is coming in from Amnesty International, where they've, in a report titled Fatally Flawed, abolish the death penalty. Now, there's a total of 1,281 persons sentenced to death, and 119 Nigerians are on this list. Please take us through this story.
Okay, so Amnesty International has released this report, which indicates that 119 Nigerians have been sentenced to death in Malaysia.
Mhm.
Now, it raises a number of questions, but first of all, I'd like to take our listeners to the harsh realities of Nigeria.
Okay.
Malaysia has always had in place a death penalty for drug trafficking. It's not new.
Mhm.
And personally, I subscribe to the view and the point that if a country has laws, you have to live and abide by those laws if you want to do anything with that country.
All right.
Now, for Nigerians to be desperate enough to traffic drugs to Malaysia, knowing fully well that there's a death penalty in, speaks to the harsh realities back home. That a Nigerian will brave the odds and decide that I'd rather try my luck in Malaysia and
Mm.
die rather than die here.
Mm.
And then it also speaks to our state policy, our state foreign policy. What is the Nigerian government doing about this? Can
Yes.
these sentences be commuted to life imprisonment?
Mm.
Is the Nigerian ambassador, is the Nigerian foreign minister, is the president taking this up? But more importantly, how did they all escape from Murtala Mohammed International Airport? Because you have the NDLEA there, you have the customs, you have the immigrations,
Mm.
and it's always a bother getting through these agencies to board a flight. So it calls into question our detection procedures and mechanisms here, and it's a wake-up call to the security agencies here to
Mm.
up their game.
All
But
right.
more importantly, we need to fix our economy.
Okay.
If we fix our economy, there will be reduced numbers of people willing to risk their lives trafficking drugs.
All right. Thank you very much for this. I'm glad you mentioned the our foreign policy, because you would notice in other parts of the world where one citizen or two citizens are involved in this kind of case, you would find out that they're trying to make a plea bargain for them. So I don't know what we haven't received. We don't have a
There are consequences to
response.
bad
No, no, no,
behavior.
no,
No, there
but no,
are.
but,
I
but,
mean, it's to
but Valentine,
reduce.
I understand where she's coming, where you're coming from, Ayo. But
Mhm.
I mean, there are consequences to bad behavior. If you try to break the law in other lands, you don't expect your government to weigh into. I don't
yeah,
get
We're
that
but
not saying
concept.
they should.
no, no,
We should not pay for the. We should not. They shouldn't pay for the crime. What we're
Mm.
asking is for it not to be
okay,
not to be death penalty.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Perhaps not sentence
but
them to
something
death.
just came up now. Something just came up to my mind. The official language of Malaysia is not English.
Mm.
It is doubtful that a lot of Nigerians speak the native language, Malay.
Mm.
Now, we don't know how the Malaysian court system works. We do not know if they fully understood the charges that were read out to them.
Mhm.
We don't know if they were able to put up the best legal defense available to them. So, a lot of things are called into question. And the
Absolutely.
Nigerian embassy needs to ensure that going forward, if any Nigerian is standing trial for drug trafficking offenses,
Mm.
they're there to help him get the best legal representation.
Understood.
Thank you very
Perfectly
much,
understood.
Barrister C. All right, let's move on to our next story. Tunde, I'll come to you for this. This generated a lot of reaction over the weekend. Why I left Nigeria for 2 months, and this is from the wife of the president of the Federation, Aisha Buhari, from the Guardian newspaper. The wife of the Nigerian president has denied there was any rancor between her and President Muhammadu Buhari, which forced or allegedly her to stay away from the country for an unusually extended period. Our First Lady is back.
Yeah, you said January said you can a lot of interest over the weekend.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, the weekend was the climax. January said interest literally the entire week, with invitations being sent out
Oh,
and all
geez.
sorts of
That
things.
was something
So if you're out there and you attended the wedding on Friday, please let us know.
On Saturday.
Yeah, sorry,
Friday.
It was
it was,
Friday.
it was
It
on
was meant to
Friday.
Well, I had a
Friday.
wedding on Saturday. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You got an invite for maybe that's the after
I got
party.
it, yeah, strict invitation.
Potentially the after party. So I mean, the summary of this, what Aisha is saying is, nothing doing here. Move on. Bottom line. That look, I travel every year to be with my kids, and this is no different. And I'm gone for sometimes in excess of 6 weeks. So really, what's the issue here? She said she went to the UK this time to be with the children. From there, she went for the Hajj. And while in the UK, she took ill. She went for the pilgrimage, and her doctor advised that she return to the UK.
Yeah.
So that's the entire summary
Yeah.
of the whole gist. One of the biggest parts that stand out to me is that Aisha flew commercial. She flew British
Yeah,
Airways. I'm
yeah.
like, wow,
Exactly.
that seems to be the biggest highlight here.
Yeah.
In that stands out. But look, it's and she has every right to be away to visit her children, especially as some will argue that you hear some say that we don't really have Buhari, that he hasn't really instituted the office of the First Lady in
yeah.
his administration. Anyway, yes, she has some responsibilities, but she says, look, he's appointed special advisors to these roles anyway, so there isn't much of an. For me, the biggest thing is there were even videos of supposedly, one report that she had been on Friday, that she had been locked in her room.
It was said that was an
It
old
was
video.
house arrest, and all of that. Obviously, an old video. One, old video, that happens a lot. Two, we're not even, really, no one had been able to validate whether indeed it was her.
She mentioned
Or
it
not.
in the
She
video.
mentioned it that it was an
She
old
mentioned
video.
it in the that it was. She did agree,
I
although the
didn't
video
see it
was
in this
cut
report.
off.
Yeah.
Interestingly.
Yeah. And it could have been for absolutely any reason. It could have been anything,
Yes.
and nothing to do with a husband. So for me, it highlights there's a lot of push, a censorship push, especially around social media. So this sort of leads credence to that, and provides the armory for people in office, people in power, politicians who want to add stricter and stronger controls on what we can say and how we. The government also have a responsibility.
Yeah.
And in this case, it would appear, unless the man gets married very, in the short coming future, and we say, okay, this was true, it would appear that that people have been irresponsible with this, and it adds credence to them trying to tighten things around all the laws that they're trying to introduce, and that we would ordinarily look at as draconian and limiting freedom of speech. It adds to that narrative that there's a lot of fake news out there. There's another one that they're pushing, describing the press as criminal, but at least the press wasn't like a member of the press that was breaking. This was things that were breaking on social media. So for me, that's the angle, and that's the biggest concern, that it doesn't provide the fire to drive agendas about that will further help the political class silence the rest of us.
All right. Thank you very much.
We're getting reactions. BDM on WhatsApp says Aisha flew first class on BA. Right?
Anything, she have flown anything else. I'm surprised she flew commercial.
Yes.
And then said that doesn't come cheap. Also consider the few aides that would have been in flight with her. Oh boy. More messages. Good morning. What do you expect the government to do? That's in reaction to the Malaysia people on death row. So Malaysia has its laws that prescribe death penalty for drug trafficking. Two Australians were executed in Indonesia a few years ago. An American lady is on death row in Malaysia. Malaysia is not commuting the sentence. More messages. Jerry says there's no smoke without fire. The First Lady hardly came back to forestall the proposed marriage.
Okay.
Obi refused to send her the judge to take her back. Come on, these are rumors.
Yes,
It's not
there's the
substantive.
difference between rumor and fact.
Yes, and this one here says from Onaivi, says escaping the harsh realities home to push drugs in Malaysia, justifying the action of the drug pusher because of the economic situation in Nigeria. That should not arise in this situation. We need to be careful with the narrative that we try to push
I think it's important for us to make a clarification there. There was no justification
at
for
all.
Yeah.
drug pushing.
Mm.
What, because we had to be fair in our analysis and balance our analysis as well. So please, there's no
So
justification.
examining all the angles
Yes,
and whatever
examine all the
reasons there may
angles
be.
and talk about fair representation, particularly legally for our Nigerian citizens. But that's okay. Well, thank you so much for your reactions to the story.
All right.
All right, let's move on to our next one here. What I'll come to you. Senate to amend 2007 Public Procurement Act, and this is from this day newspaper. The Senate has indicated its readiness to amend the 2007 Public Procurement Act over the reported cumbersomeness in adhering strictly to its provisions. Now, if you remember what if you know, in recent times we've been talking about the loopholes in the procurement process, particularly in government, when we hear of things happening and they're like they didn't know how this happened, and we're wondering, was there no procedure, no process? Well, it's in talks of amending this act. Can you please take us through the story from this day newspaper?
Okay. The Society of Public Health Professionals of Nigeria met with Senator Tazi with respect to amendments to the Public Procurement Act. I've gone through this act from cover to cover. I think it's a good act. However, the, the major challenge I see is because the the process itself seems to be elongated because there's too much paper being pushed. The basic things that are supposed to be done is setting out your system long before this procurements are initiated
Yeah.
are not in place. For me, yes, there should be some amendments, maybe in the process itself, by bringing it much more technology to drive this process. That's what I really see. Where procurement processes take 8 9 months is really not is not is not ideal and not justifiable, especially for governance, whereby budgets are done on a yearly basis, which is cash based. And if I have to make a procurement in January and I'm not able to get an approval till September or maybe December, it means I have to return those monies, and some of the basic amenities that we require will probably not work. So I guess it's something that they should look at and see how they can bring in more technology to drive it, so that the process of requesting for goods or services in the
Yes.
government will be faster,
Mhm.
and it's not going to be based on pushing paper.
Yeah.
And set up a proper what's it called, supply chain management system with your suppliers already available, and you know who they are, and doing the necessary due diligence before you put them on
All right.
the procurement budget.
Thank you. Move on to our next story here. But before then, let's take some comments.
Femi sent in a message. Please add your names to your messages so we can take them. Femi says, for the rumored wedding, it gives stronger credence to controlling and penalizing poor, especially for federal state like ours. Freedom of speech is not freedom to drive falsehood and divisive, corrosive
Absolutely.
narratives. That is an abuse of rights. Emeka here says, could it not be that Aisha was away in order to be, come on, Dele, let's not preach this, please. Josh says, the rumored wedding last week on social media was a big disappointment for me. Buhari was in Abuja, Aisha was in the UK, the other lady in question was
The other lady is a federal minister, by the way.
What if this was something different, like a call to arms or something? I suppose some level of control should be put in place before this goes out of control. Enoch says, what is the update for the strike action? We're about to get to that story.
Actually, that's our next story for this morning. Thank you very much. So Tunde, let's talk about the minimum wage and get ready for nationwide strike. NLC tells workers. This report we're taken from the Premium Times. So ahead of the expiration of the ultimatum issued by labor unions over the minimum wage implementation, the unions have asked their branches across the country to get set for an industrial action. Last week we talked about this, the fact that the NLC had threatened to go on a nationwide strike if they didn't come to a conclusion or an agreement regards to the minimum wage implementation. Now they're asking their comrades across the country to be up in arms. What do you have to say about this?
Okay, and it rumbles on. And look, maybe we should highlight what the differences are, and why, because it's easy for us to oversimplify and say that, or they just want to increase the minimum wage by, to 30,000 naira. That's not the issue. However,
Yes.
when you raise the minimum wage, it has a consequence. It has a consequence on the entire, wage structure.
Yes.
Say, for instance, you're at the bottom of the ladder and you're earning below 30,000, and then you raise 30,000. It is only equitable that the people who are a step or two, just levels ahead of you,
Yes.
will have a commensurate increase in their pay as well to reflect that the minimum has gone up. Now, that is where Labour and the federal government have differences. There's no argument for an increase in the implementation of the minimum wage for levels 1 to 6.
Yes.
Perhaps those are the levels that are below 30,000 anyway. However, there is a huge difference in I think levels 7 to 14,
Yes.
where Labour is asking for an increase in the region of 24% or thereabouts, and the government is saying no. The increase in minimum wage does not translate to a total salary review. Total salary reviews are scheduled for 2020.
Yes.
Now, let me bring all of this. A huge thought that comes to my mind is that, look, I know we're talking about minimum wage, but we like subsidies in this country.
Yes.
We just like subsidies, and this is what I mean. We really can't afford it as a nation. Many of the states, because it's not just at the federal level, can't afford this. When it becomes law, it will be the government once again subsidizing salaries. Moving,
yes.
we're already subsidizing a bunch
We're
of things.
already
So
doing that,
we should
yeah.
ask as a nation, when we come out and we say we hate subsidies, we hate oil subsidies, we hate essentially moving the money from one place to one subsidy to start and increase another one. Putting this in perspective, salaries, pensions, and wages of the federal, as this is a budget thing, of the federal civil service has ballooned by almost 1.5 trillion in 5 years, from 1.96 trillion in 2014,
Yes.
2.75 trillion in 2017, 3.5 trillion in 2018, and it is projected to go to over 4.9 trillion in 2020. Balance that against our revenues. The revenue for the 2018 fiscal year is 3.9 trillion, where we're projecting to spend more on recurring income, on salaries than we earn. When you look at the budget breakdown, you see that when you put together borrowing and debt servicing,
Yes.
it's already together is in the region of 4 point something trillion. Salaries are not the only thing that we're going to have to deal with within this budget. So many other areas,
Yes.
right? So it's clear why they're struggling with this. The announcements were made. It's clear it was politicking at the time.
All right.
Now their hands are tied. They can't implement. Labour says they want to go on strike. Where it's an impossible situation. The country really can't afford this.
We can't afford this. They're saying by Wednesday that if no agreement has been reached, they're going on industrial strike.
And just one more. Let's also realize that they plan to increase VAT, right? So you're increasing salaries on one side. So you're adding on one side, you're subtracting on that. Really, what's the point?
Right,
And just
thank
last
you.
week, we had a conversation about understanding, the lack of understanding that existed in the negotiations before they went in, and now it's becoming very apparent at this stage. But let's get to other parts that still concern money. As a group now, this group is called the Real Estate Developers Association of Nigeria. They say they are working with an arm of the units as attached to the EFCC as well. They work in tandem with the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission as a special control unit on money laundering. They've come together to try to seek ways to control or check the high level of illicit funds that's flowing through the sector. Take us through the story, Tunde. We've seen that, financial regulations, we find that most of these laws are flouted. A lot of buildings are abandoned, and it's raising concern.
To be honest, it's long overdue. It's long overdue that we've needed concerted, efforts and a focus in this issue and in this sector, in the property sector. Real estate is and it's not unique to Nigeria. I mean, there are all sorts of it's well documented how the UK property market too is abused, especially if people who are looking to stash away funds in that economy. So the real estate sector is always an attractive place to to launder money, hide stolen funds, and a bunch of and those things. But what have they done? That they have focused on changing some of the laws, because it's opaque. Even the property laws there in determining who the real owners of certain properties are, and all of that. So while the FCC works with Redan, we should also work on laws. It's too easy for people to, I like to call it cash translation. You make money illicitly, and then you start to build property, which is why, just look at occupancy rates on large parts of Lagos, especially towards the Lekki axis. Research shows that occupancy is in the region of 45%, below 50%. So there are a lot of empty properties. Why so? If you've built a place and you've built it supposedly for the purposes of business, because you see that they're listed as to let or to buy, owners don't mind it being empty for years, right? If you borrowed money for that property, you will not leave it empty. So maybe can we introduce laws around, and they did similar things in the UK, and I think in Hong Kong. You can't allow your property be empty indefinitely. There should be a time period. But all of this, if it's to be serious, all of this starts from actually even proper registration and being able to identify who owns what and who owns what property. And we can use technology for this. We really need to modernize the sector so that it can be properly policed, but it is long overdue.
And especially highlighting the possibility of the owners of this illicit funds using that as a medium to clean their money.
No, that's what they do. That's a huge avenue for money laundering.
Thank you very much, Tunde, for your analysis. Let's come to you, Wade. From real estate, let's go to power, which is one area of expertise for you. Electricity generation companies, GenCos, comprising gas-fired and hydro stations, they say they've released an average of 3,226 megawatts of electricity into the national grid on Saturday. They released this energy report through its advisory power team. I was invited to a press conference last weekend, and a lot of questions came up on power. So when we hear these figures, 3,226 megawatts of electricity, how does that translate to me having light in my house? What kind of difference does that make?
That's a very important
question. That's a very good question, Valentine. The truth about it is that on the average, for you to have the right hour of power in your house, Nigeria needs to be able to generate and distribute a minimum of about 10,000 megawatts. So when we are distributing or generating 3,200, it is quite low. But there are a number of reasons for this. There's gas, there's inability to transmit and distribute some of this power. Like from the report, it was also said that on that Saturday, they generated maximum generation at a particular point in time was 542 megawatts.
Is that nationwide or state?
Nationwide.
State level? Okay.
Nationwide.
Okay.
Nationwide. The capacity across Nigeria that I know in terms of generation is over 10,000, about 15,000 megawatts. But we cannot even generate a lot of all that. Why? Because there's no gas. The gas suppliers and the energy people don't believe that the cost of gas to the power sector is lucrative enough. That's one. Two, the transmission and distribution channels do not have the capacity to take on the average more than this 4,500.
How about the national grid?
I'm talking about the national grid.
So what's the state of the national grid? Because the 10,000 and 15,000 sounds very nice in principle, but in real terms,
the best we can get.
Is this strong enough to produce that?
You can produce that, but the question is, can you distribute that? Because the infrastructure for transmission and distribution cannot take technically more than, if it's too good, maybe 5,000 megawatts on a daily basis without any challenges. So there is need for investment in transmission and distribution infrastructure. The power sector will tell you that they need to get more money to be able to do this.
And who's responsible for contributing to making this happen?
Everybody.
Who's everybody?
The customer who pays by paying your bills on time and paying.
We seem to be paying more than what we get.
Well, maybe.
Uh-huh.
I really can't say about that. But the truth about it is that this is just a report that comes out every day. There's a daily report by the advisory
Council.
of
Yes.
the
Gencos. Yes.
that provides this. So I get this report every day. So on the average, what happens is this is basically what you get on the average.
On the plus side, though, when it rained heavily on Saturday, we had light at some point. So
That's
commendable.
Yeah, that's really commendable because usually because of water, some of these infrastructures are shut down. So
not even just water, the scale of
the scale of lightning
and all
thunder.
that destroying the equipment.
All right, let's take this one on fake news. It's instructive how this administration allows such rumors to spread when a statement from one of the numerous aides could have killed this instantly.
Right.
A number of people have said that we should have gotten at least a statement over the weekend. This is from Lorenzo, by the way.
Thank you very much, Lorenzo. Let's thank you, Mr. C, for your analysis in this story. Now, defense budget. So when you see figures like this as part of the headlines, you just you raise eyebrows, you're suspicious, but this is, it seems to be a national budget for them in this sense. The Ministry of Defense has set aside 71 million naira for welfare packages in 2020. We know that this cuts across just beyond food and material, but let's take us through this story. Let us understand the ramifications of this sum.
Okay, so the story highlights certain details on the proposed defense budget for 2020. Now, the sum of 71 million is proposed for welfare packages, whatever that means, because the story doesn't explain what welfare packages it means.
Yeah, we know what it means here now.
Go on.
Okay, so now in 2020, surprisingly, the sum of 80 million naira is proposed to be spent to purchase defense equipment. Now, this is shocking because 80 million is about 222,000 US dollars at the current exchange rate. You are in the midst of one of the hottest insurgencies you've had in recent times, and you are proposing to spend only 80 million naira. So are you telling is the defense ministry telling Nigerians that the equipment they currently have is more than enough to deal with Boko Haram?
And you have a problem with that because?
I have a problem with that because 80 million naira is too small.
Yes. So why is it? Why do you think it's being small is a problem? That's what I'm
Because it is clear that with the current equipment and arsenal we have, we do not have enough to tackle Boko Haram. We need more.
Is that what you think?
It's a fact. If you speak to security analysts and experts, they will tell you the fact. Boko Haram attacks military formations, and for hours on end, they're there. There's no response from the Nigerian military.
Apart from you even talking about the amount of money allocated to equipment, isn't it worrying that amount of money allocated to food is more than equipment?
Now, this food is not for the troops, so this is clearly defense headquarters.
How do you know? How's that how?
No, Valentine. Okay, so what it is we have at least 80,000 Nigerian soldiers. Clearly, the defense ministry cannot be telling us that for the whole of 2020, they're going to spend 30 million feeding them.
Hang on a second. In the next story, the adjoining story, this day had a comprehensive report where they released or reported that there are plots, the new strategies that is plotted by the military to end insurgency in 3 months. And there they stated that the president is expected to sign a military technical cooperation agreement with Russia for the supply of attack helicopters, military transport planes, and battle tanks.
Beautiful.
So it seems like some of these other loopholes that you just highlighted in the
No,
previous
they're
story
not.
are already taken care
No,
of.
they're not. And I'll explain why.
Okay.
The 2019 budget is already in play, right? This discussion is coming after the 2019 budget. No, wait. So meaning that the funds for this proposed Russian equipment purchase were not captured in the 2019 budget. Now, this is the proposed 2020 budget, and you want to spend 80 million naira. You can't use 80 million naira to buy one missile.
Assume that this insurgency ends in 3 months, as this day report speculates, which is couched within 2019 budget, assumably. Why would you need more than 80 million for 2020?
How long has the Boko Haram insurgency been on for? More than 10 years. There is no evidence on the ground to suggest it will end in 3 months.
All right. Thank you very much indeed.
Quick message.
Well, Kingdom is a bit optimistic. He says 80 million military equipment budget could be that Boko Haram war has been technically won.
Yeah, technically.
Very, very optimistic.
Sorry, I just have to quickly put it in perspective. 80 million naira doesn't buy you a new G-Wagon. It doesn't buy you a new LX 570. Right? And then you're talking about, fighting the insurgency,
Honestly,
guys.
we cannot add any other
Doesn't buy you an S-Class.
10 seconds.
89 million is going to be spent on international travels in the coming year, and we're spending 80 million.
Local and international.
Local and international.
It's the same
And we're
thing.
spending
And
80
you
million.
didn't mention 60 million on research and development. So there's so many.
Well, Uche says that remember that the equipment they were expecting deliveries from the United States, which were paid for last year. So maybe that's why.
2022.
So maybe that's why it's so low. But thank you so much to everyone who sent in messages. Unfortunately, we couldn't go through each of them, but we do appreciate them. And thanks to our analyst, Tunde Okufia Bikus on Twitter, Mr. C at Mr. C with 5 E's on Twitter, and of course, Wadia Hime at Inc. Nigeria on Twitter. Next, we have the Locker Room 981 with Tega. Stay tuned here on Smooth 98.1. What kind of budget
Guys are
is
clowns.
I mean, it's a serious country.
These guys are
See,
clowns.
see what this guy just highlighted. He said,
The
so
one about-
remember the $1 billion that the presidency assessed from foreign reserve for weapons. So that's already dead. So I mean, if they spend too much, people will complain.
Any serious economy, any serious nation spends a huge budget,
Yeah.
and that's when they don't have insurgents.
Val is playing devil's advocate.
This money that they're supposed to be, it should be in the budget.
It should be in the
It
budget.
should reflect in the budget.
It should
But
show.
also,
Yeah,
also shows,
that's what it is.
It also shows that oftentimes we don't actually follow the budget.
No, we don't.
The budget is
We don't.
just. I don't know why we go through the
Defense
process
is
of.
defense is a huge avenue that money
That money
funds are
goes.
swiped.
It's all over the world. It's not just.
It's not in the budget for that $1 billion. It's not in the budget for a
What is
reason.
profitable?
Yes,
Clearly.
that's why people advocate for war.
I went to the TV, but I'm starting from radio first.
Okay, guys,
Baba,
have a great week.
it's paid.